Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com.
Welcome to the Paranormal News Insider for the week of November 30th, 2021, and episode number 495. And this is your host, Dr. Brian D. Parsons, and we are live on the Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com. And yes, we are back. It's been a little while. Been out for, over a month. Didn't plan on it, just kind of happened. I took a week off after my Westerville Public Library appearance. I was out there on a Monday night and then canceled, pretty much just didn't do a show that Tuesday. I planned on coming back the next Tuesday, but unfortunately, I don't get to pay the bills from this show or the 6 books that I've published. Money doesn't come from working in the paranormal. So my job pretty much demanded that I work overnights for that for a few weeks, actually, leading up to pretty much Black Friday sales. So I work in e-commerce, which is this is the time of the year for that, and so spend a lot of hours working, and unfortunately, starting at 8 o'clock during every single Tuesday. So not cool, not fun. Not fun to stay up all night unless I want to do it. It's different when you're working, I guess. But I do I am a night owl. I do like to stay up late, but not working. It's not fun. So October 29th, I was a Friday, I believe. I appeared on a radio station, 94 Rock, out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was invited to appear along with Benjamin Radford, and that was a lot of fun, talking ghosts, paranormal things. Of course, leading up to Halloween, that's the busy season, the silly season for those of us involved in the paranormal. So pretty much only 2 appearances this year. It's pretty thin. And I made a comment in the chat room about this will be the first year I can remember that I've never left the state of Ohio, which is crazy. I mean, at least I'll venture over to Pennsylvania, go kayaking or hiking or backpacking or something. But not this year. I didn't leave. 2020, I traveled pre-pandemic. I was out in Arizona. It's when I first saw, this is in January, late January, saw people with masks on for the first time. Didn't know it was coming. And the world shut down. So yeah, no traveling this year, which really stinks. But we're back this week. We got a little bit of catching up to do with some old news. Not going to rehash everything that happened over the course of the last month, but we do have some big news that occurred just within the last few days, the last week or so, that we'll catch up on. And yeah, it's been pretty boring after Halloween. It's pretty much kind of a shutdown. That's why December is usually the month that I concentrate on the top 10 paranormal news stories of the year, which, granted, you can't do that in June or July, right? You got to wait for the year to unwind. But I also don't do that in January because the stuff starts picking up. And last year we learned our lesson. I learned my lesson. I started crafting the top 10 about mid-November. And then we had the monolith story. You guys remember that? The monolith appearing all over the world. And then the Arecibo telescope down in Arecibo, Puerto Rico collapsed. So things can happen whenever. It seems like December things start ramping up. Definitely January we're going to have a lot of stuff. So I don't want to wait too long. I'm still kind of putting the final touches on the top 10 paranormal news stories of 2021, and that's coming soon. I've done different formats over the years. Sometimes I'll do 2 a night, but I've done the entire countdown in one night before. So I'm not sure how, but we'll get to it. Fear not, it's not that major of a year. So anything that happens between now and the end of the year may crack the top 10. You just don't know. I'm a little critical about that when stories break late in the year, putting that in the top 10, though, because I have a tendency to put a little bit too much weight on a newer story versus stuff that happened earlier in the year. And I'll tell you, when I go through that list, some of these stories just seem like they happened so long ago. And interestingly, tonight, we've got part two of a story that we started talking about back on the first show of 2021. I love when stories come around again. They wrap themselves up. It's always nice. It's always nice to put them to bed. I always have a list of stories that never had a solution to them. I have a little notebook here of, and there's probably 30 or 40 of these things still that I haven't figured out, that are left kind of wide open. And we'll see what other news stories crack that top 10. A lot of interesting stories. And started talking about some stories like this. First one for tonight, encrypted news. A few years ago, started talking about all these random animals that are running amok all over the United States, and it's kind of worrisome when you think about it. Some of these animals are pretty dangerous, and they're not used to being around people, and people here in the United States are not used to seeing some of these wild animals, and it creates a lot of problems. Luckily, we haven't had any major injuries or accidents related to these creatures that have escaped, and it just seems like gaining a lot of momentum and getting my attention a lot more. And a few years ago, it was alligators. Before that, it was mountain lions, but that was really natural ones, loose in the wild. But all these wild cats and things escaping all over the place. And now, probably, I don't know if you remember, but it's been a while, like 5 weeks. We were talking about the zebras. And this story took a lot of twists and turns since mid October when I was talking about these. I thought it was an amazing story at first. And the more it unfolded and the more the information that came out, it got darker and darker. It's pretty, it's kind of turned into a horrible story. I thought it was a cute and entertaining story about people driving around seeing zebras on the loose. And, out there in Maryland, and kids were wearing zebra costumes to school for Halloween. It was all the talk. And now it's taken kind of a dark turn. So back in mid-October, I talked about the amazing story about how 5 zebras escaped an enclosure back on August 31st, and we're still living in the woods of Maryland now. It's been clarified that it wasn't 5; it was actually 3. So initially, sources stated there were 3 escaped zebras, and then a week later, it said 5. And in fact, there were only 3 all the time. And basically, that started when they were transporting these zebras. They were putting them into an enclosure, and 3 of them escaped during that time. And the person who was overseeing that really didn't have any sort of background on dealing with zebras or large wild animals like that. They're not like horses. They look like horses. They act a little bit differently. It was stated that there was a pack of 2 and a pack of 3, but it was only partially true, as there was only that trio on the run. And they didn't really seem to go too far away from where they were supposed to be. So they're kind of hanging out with their pack in neighboring private pieces of private property. Another sad thing that came up is that one of the zebras died back on September 16th after being caught in an illegal snare trap. So they were, it was on property right behind where the zebras are. Yeah, I don't know if I have the name of the people, but the the people that own that property have no idea how that snare trap got set, and it's literally 2 feet away from the fence of where the zebras are living. So they think that the owner, or one of the people, the caretaker, I should say, placed that trap, trying to snare one of the zebras to capture it and bring it back. Unfortunately, it got caught up and just died over a period of days. And it had to have made a lot of noise. It's really sad to think about that. And that fact was revealed on October 14th after officials stated they were close to capturing the creatures in a safe manner. And it was also disclosed that the owner of the 80-acre farm is Jerry Holly, and Holly has an up-to-date USDA permit for his animals, which includes 30 zebra. Linda Lowe, a spokeswoman for the Prince George's County Department of the Environment, stated, quote, "Any further review and action taken by Prince George's County, including appropriate charges against the owner, will be evaluated once the zebras return to the herd," unquote. Well, that wasn't the case, as just a few days later, Holly was charged with 3 counts of animal cruelty. He was also charged with not providing adequate shelter, food, or veterinary care to his pack of zebras. Each of the 3 misdemeanor charges carries a maximum of 90 days in prison or a fine of $1,000. The charges were filed on October 20th, and court documents filed the previous day state the dead zebra was, quote, caught in a snare within 2 feet of the fence line, directly beside the fenced enclosure where the other 36 zebras were being held, unquote. And police also added that, quote, the animal should have been seen or heard while it was dying from being caught in the snare if the caretaker had attended to the zebras in the fenced enclosure, and most likely died of dehydration after a period of a few days struggling in the trap, unquote. Those snares are illegal in Maryland for any type of animal. As far as I know, I don't know their hunting regulations that closely, because I know you can use snares for certain animals at certain times of the year, but probably not for zebras. In the middle of, well, I guess that was the fall, but still, this is September. So, my goodness. And if it can trap a zebra, what would it have done to a deer or a smaller animal, somebody's dog, for that matter, being curious about zebras? I know I would have wanted to go see those. I know if I was walking through there, that would not be very very good. Granted, hopefully I would have my cell phone and call for help, but probably lose my leg in the process. Holly's exotic animal breeding business has been cited by the U.S. Department of Agriculture for over 100 violations of the Animal Welfare Act, with his 2 properties that he has, one in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, where the zebras are being held, as well as one in Florida. The Florida one apparently is really heavily fined, a lot. He's been cited 240 times in 17 years for various wildlife violations. Again, most of them coming in Florida, which I think that's where he lives. I don't know why he has property in Maryland, or why you're, got 40 zebra, well, down to 36 now. In addition to the zebra caught in an illegal trap, another dead zebra was spotted by a news helicopter, which tipped off county investigators, and it led to this investigation. So, 2 zebras are still on the loose, and they I don't have all that information looking here, but the neighbors that live behind them have been documenting their sightings, and these zebras are actually on their property, and they're trying to get money put together to capture them humanely. And initially, they wanted to help return them to the to the herd because that seems like that's the right thing to do. But then all of these investigations coming forward and all the violations and all this other dark stuff about another zebra being killed has come forward. So now they're trying to get money raised to help get these zebra taken to a much better location so they can be safe and taken care of more appropriately than these poor zebras in Maryland. So the other remaining 36 are being cared for by one person with no experience or adequate knowledge of the species, according to a report by a USDA inspection. So there's been word that those zebra are more than likely going to be taken away. Granted, that's a huge haul of animals, so they have to have that planned out pretty well in advance. It's going to cost a lot of money to transport those animals and get them to a proper area to be taken care of, which is really sad. Again, I started covering the story. I thought it was a cute, little story that people are seeing zebras running on the loose in Maryland. It was pretty cool, but now, yeah, it's turned into a dark story, and a lot of people wonder, well, why don't you just go back there and just shoot them with a tranquilizer dart? Seems like an easy thing to do. Well, zebras are very high energy animals, and in order to use a tranquilizer, it's not like Jurassic Park or something like that. Where you're just gonna shoot a giant animal and hope you got the right amount of tranquilizer in it. Too much, you kill the animal. Not enough, the animal might kill you. Um, Zebras will you shoot them with a tranquilizer. Granted, I guess you could probably guess, with a horse. I don't know why you'd maybe a little bit more than a horse because they're pretty bulky creatures. But if you don't get the right amount, and they're saying that the zebras don't act like horses, they will boost a lot more adrenaline into their system because obviously they run from a variety of animals. We don't have lions here. Well, I guess we do have lions here in the United States, mountain lions, but not like African lions that zebras are used to. And so they're used to high adrenaline chases. So if they're shot with a tranquilizer dart, there's a chance that they could run amok. It could cause harm to themselves or bystanders. And obviously, it hasn't taken much for that to happen. We already have two dead zebras, but I don't know. I think there's got to be a way they can capture those things by now. It's been months, safely, humanely, because winter is upon us, and some experts have said that they'll be fine. But the USDA has cited the farm for not providing adequate shelter. So you wonder if they will be fine. And the neighbors that I mentioned, they've been feeding the zebras hay. They've been putting hay down for them, so they're getting food at least. But hopefully they're able to capture these animals and get them out of that area, get them somewhere safer. It's a really kind of a sad story when you think about it, but hopefully it will have a much better ending to it. Speaking of animals on the loose, another wrap up story for this last few weeks here. This one comes from Royal Oak, Michigan. And once again, the delicate balance of protecting neighborhoods, the environment, as well as the rights of pet owners has come into the spotlight. This time, Elaine Westfall, who's the owner of 4 African caracals, one named Bam Bam, one named Pebbles, and then Wasabi and Fire. She couldn't fill out the rest of the Flintstones there, I guess. In late October, at least 2 of the medium-sized wildcats escaped their elaborate enclosure and tiptoed through the neighborhood. Police were notified and immediately warned schools in the area, shut down everything, and made it sound like a 500-pound tiger was on the loose. I think it was a little overkill on their part, reading through some of their warnings. But I guess you can't take enough precautions, because if you don't take enough precautions and somebody gets hurt, then they get in trouble, or somebody gets offended, or something happens. Police recovered the cats and returned them to Westfall, but have also issued her 5 citations, as well as a demand that she has to take the cats out of the neighborhood. Caracals are similar looking to servals, but have a kind of a uniformed colored coat. Servals have the spots. Caracals also have those. Caracals and servals also have the large ears, but the caracals have the tufts of fur, at the top, kind of like a lynx. You ever seen the lynx? You can look. There's some dog food, I think, that has the lynx on it. It's got those long little hairs coming up on the ears, the tops of the ears. Caracals are also quick runners. They got those long legs, and they're a little shorter than servals, but they're stockier, and they can weigh up to 50 pounds. 50 pounds. It's pretty big for a cat. And yeah, it's more of a dog, really, that weight. But they're cats. And they're also known to be able to leap at least 12 feet in the air. And just like the serval, they're escape artists. And that's why we keep hearing about these escaped caracals and servals, because they're escape artists. They're not used to being enclosed like this. They're wild animals, and they'll act that way, even though they're cute. And you can go and buy them at pet stores and stuff. You can buy them online. They're wild animals, and they'll act as such. But a lot of people want to keep them as pets, and they think people are under the impression that just because I can love and care for an animal, that I'm going to make it less wild. Well, that's not true. They're wild animals, and house cats really haven't changed too much. They're still wild animals, as anybody who has a cat probably knows. If you let it loose in the garage or outside around your house, they'll come back with a gift. Here's a little mouse for you. So the hunting doesn't go away. You don't see dogs run through the neighborhood and attack and kill prey, or attacking deer or anything like that. You don't see that. But cats, it's hard to take that natural instinct of killing or wanting to roam out of a cat. They're a little different than dogs. Westfall states she has spent at least $50,000 purchasing the cats from Africa and Florida, as well as creating the elaborate enclosures in her backyard and garage, which obviously aren't elaborate enough. And she's now terrified that police will come to her house and confiscate the cats, and she's got nowhere to send them, as they're not like regular house cats. But again, she was ordered by the chief of police to get her cats out of the city and given 5 citations. And she has transported the cats to the Indian Creek Zoo, although her attorney states she's got a right to keep the cats. There's no ordinance to this. There's no laws or any regulations in regard to owning a caracal, which is confusing given the order. But police state that the cats have escaped at least twice before, and it's caused a lot of issues. And she obviously is a little overwhelmed by these 4 cats that. Every street has a crazy cat lady. But this is a really crazy cat lady. Royal Oak is currently conducting a study to determine what to do prior to solidifying any sort of ordinance on non-exotic animals. And this has been an ongoing issue in a lot of states, a lot of cities, with these caracals and servals, especially with the savanna cats, which attempts to take a little bit of wildness out of it, and it creates a kind of a loophole in an exotic animal law, because you're injecting, house cat DNA into these creatures to try to keep them really from being regulated as an exotic animal, although they still pretty much act about the same. Unless you really put a lot of DNA into it and kind of drowned out the wildness out of the cat. But it takes a while, and it's not like a dog where with the dog proper training and care, you can keep a dog from being violent or doing bad things. But cats are cats, and breeds are going to act certain ways, unlike dogs. People will always say, "Well, pit bulls are dangerous." No, it's the owners of pit bulls who are dangerous, who train them to do things that they shouldn't be doing. But the dog breed, in and of itself, they're dangerous with their kisses, is what they are, and they're very loving and obedient creatures, and that's their downfall. They're very obedient, so when the owner teaches them to do things that they shouldn't be doing, they'll do it because that's what they're trained to do. Again, unlike cats do what they want to do, and they're very close to their wild ties, and they don't really domesticate very well. They've pretty much domesticated themselves, and we can't really change that. So we'll see. And these stories, I'm sure, are kind of stirring up a lot of thoughts across the country about what to do with these non-exotic animals and how to regulate these things so that we don't have a continuation of the repeat of this story. And the last story I have in cryptid news, kind of unusual this time of the year. And granted, we only got one more day. Actually, we're down to like 3.5 hours in the month of November. Yikes! It's already December. Whew. Well, I guess we already got snow here in Ohio, so be it. And usually countdowns and lists, so top 10 lists and things like that. We see a lot of those in December as I don't know. We just count down. We look back on the year that was. However, a website called yourmoneygeek.com has published an article titled "The Scariest Mythical Creatures from Each of America's 50 States." And I love stuff like that. I think it's neat. And years and years ago, when I really didn't know too much about the field, it was really cool to see this and see the different creatures that people are fearful of or talk about in their particular states or regions of the country or of the world. And in this particular story, each of the creatures is accompanied by a kind of a cartoonish representation of said creature, along with a short description. So it's pretty cool. If you live in the United States, you probably hopefully know the creature that's associated with your state in this list. There's a couple surprises. I think there's a few that they could have gone with a different creature or other creatures, but I think they hit the nail on the head with some of these. It seems like there's a lot of water creatures, though. I think probably too many, to be honest. But most of the creatures should be well known if you live in or near those states. I'm sure you've heard some of the folklore behind them. Some of the easy ones: Florida, skunk ape. That's a pretty good one. They've got a lot of creatures down there, but skunk ape, I think he's the big one down there. Missouri has the Ozark howler. Montana, the Flat Lake monster. And of course, the Jersey Devil is the representative for New Jersey. Here in Ohio, the Frogman. I wasn't sure which way they would go with that. We have a lot of Bigfoot-like creatures, including Grassman. But they went Frogman, which I think is pretty cool. And let's see, West Virginia's got the Flatwoods Monster, which is pretty much the big one there. But a lot of these states, especially out west, have ones that people probably aren't too familiar with, but pretty common. I don't think there was any that I haven't heard of. But again, I was kind of surprised by some which are lesser known. Some of them are like ghosts. They're not even really creatures, but They've used some popular ghost um, stories as kind of stand-ins for these scariest mythical creatures from each of America's 50 states. And I'll post that link through the Facebook, the official home of the Paranormal News Insider on Facebook, which Facebook has been, yikes, don't get me started on that website. Don't spend much time on there anymore because of just issues and people um, trying to friend me that are not real people or organizations, whatever. Just a lot of just nefarious stuff happening on that website that it just drives me away from it. But it's unfortunately one of the great avenues of communication as well. And through the Paranews Insider Facebook page, which is what it is, facebook.com/Paranews Insider. You can search Paranormal News Insider. It's also connected to Twitter. So if you're into Twitter, you'll get both of those are, well, mine are connected to each other. So you'll get one or the other if you're into one or the other. If you're outside of that, too bad. I'm not really doing a TikTok thing. I know that's the big thing right now, but don't really think I have a reason to do that for the show. But no, maybe we'll see. See how they do it. So I think I closed the story out. What was the California one? I can't remember. I think it was a lake monster. Let's look that up real quick. What the California one was. Yeah, that's your cryptid news for this week. We got some big UFO stuff that's unwinding. I'm looking up California. What was the California? Oh, Tahoe Tessie was California's creature. Kind of looks like the Loch Ness monster. Tahoe Tessie. Yeah, I guess they have. I know they have a museum down there for that thing. But yeah, I don't know how big it is outside of Lake Tahoe. But Tahoe Tessie, your California creature. Yikes! Thought California's got a lot. Maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger is in the running to be one of the scariest mythical creatures. Anyway, we're gonna head to UFO news for the week, and probably one of the bigger stories outside of all the politics surrounding UFOs this year occurred in southern France. I kind of watched this one unfold over a few days' time. You knew it was coming. You knew it was going to unfold, and it was knew it was a hoax. I didn't think it would be a big deal, but it ended up being kind of a big deal in France and Europe. They're really talking about this quite a bit. So there was a number of UFO sightings in southern France. Granted, they called them OVNIs over there in Spain, France, Portugal, some of those European countries. OVNI, because of the way they talk over there. Anyway, it alarmed the public. People were worried. Some people were flipped out about this, and they were on high alert. The media was carrying stories on this every single night as they covered this unfolding story. And the UFO reports were carried on multiple news stations, although it started basically with one. And of course, anytime any news station anywhere in the world has a story, everyone else has to jump on top of it. That's just how it is. The UFO reports were carried, again, multiple stations, which then hits more people and created even more confusion and people being concerned about what's flying around the skies. And then it kind of took a life of its own after that. However, not everyone was fooled, and it didn't take too long. It took a couple of days. A lot of people were chiming in. And as the stories got bigger and bigger, it didn't take too long for people to figure out who was behind all this, because he was actually on TV working with the media, pointing out to the media about the sightings. The gentleman in question is a pretty well-known public persona. And it didn't take people too long to figure it out. He ended up having to step out of the shadows to admit, yes, I'm behind it all. And this person had the intention of fooling the media and fooling the general public at the same time, uh, making them think that aliens were flying over the area. Now, I don't agree with the way it happened because when you're taking video and you're telling the media, look, hey, I've got these UFOs or OVNI, and this is the real deal, and they're buying into it, and they're broadcasting it, and you're getting other people worked up about it, and you're still flying a drone around with the light on it, fooling more and more people. That's kind of cheating. But that's what this guy does. His name is Remy Gaillard, a 20-year plus veteran of large public pranks, and he came forward on his YouTube channel to announce that he was behind the nighttime light in the sky and that a simple drone was to blame. So he had a small crew of people. He launched a drone with a long, thin light, made it look like a tic-tac-toe UFO. Tic-tac-toe? I mean, a tic-tac. No, hold the toe, I guess. A little tic-tac UFO flying to the sky, and after he put up a video on through the media, then of course, as he flew it pretty much the same time every night in different areas of southern France, people also began to step forward with video, and of course, you're causing public panic that way, I think, and of course, people are on the lookout for it, and the media. So it used to be the media would research things and investigate things. They don't really do that anymore. They don't care about that. They just all they care about is putting something that's happening out in front of the general public, and they don't care what it causes. Their thing is to sell um, advertising slots. They don't care about the news. They don't care about the truth. They just care about selling advertising slots. If you got a car dealership, we want you on board. You're selling insurance, we want you on board. And whatever we got to do to get as many viewers to watch our news show, which is just people out there writing stuff down or texting it in and saying, hey, this is the story. Here's a video. I'll go ahead and put it on there. I don't care about getting to the truth. And so fooling the media is pretty easy to do. I don't see why he's celebrating that. It's not that big of a deal, I don't think. But yeah, he just used a drone and he wedged his way into the media. Now, Gaillard has been a controversial prankster in France, doing things from wearing various video game and animal costumes to sneaking into the FIVB France World League Championship team photo just days after their win in Serbia in 2015. And most of his pranks are the hidden camera style of thing. I basically think he's just a YouTube persona. I don't know why they call those people influencers. I think that's a silly thing to call them. He once dressed as a giant pigeon. Yes, a giant pigeon, and stood on top of a car wash. Well, you wash your car, and the pigeons, well, they dirty them up, I guess. So that was a really funny prank. And his latest prank also included he used a giant UFO. Didn't look that real. You could barely fit inside of it. He would wear a little costume and he'd come out of the UFO while it was parked in the middle of a road in various places in France to prank people. He had one scene where he was trying to allure a cow into the UFO. He tried to get towed. And another one, the tow truck driver took off like, you're crazy. He tried to fuel up his UFO on an active airstrip, which they sent the fire brigade out after him. So people aren't happy with him. But the big thing he did was flying the drone at night with a bright light underneath in an attempt to scare people into thinking they saw a UFO. Not funny. And so, yeah, he just tried to prank the media, which, again, isn't that hard to do. But if you're going to create a UFO and park it in the middle of the road here, don't do it in the United States because we'll probably just drive right through it and destroy your little paper mache project. And you'll probably get arrested. But I don't think it was funny, but it's one thing if you're just going to fly that thing around and the reports start up on their own, but it's another if you're going to actively submit this to the media and have them come out and have them witness this because they don't care. It's just if it's a cool story, they're going to put it on there and get the media all fired up about it. Now, what happened to him? I don't know. I don't really didn't really follow that story that well. Just after this is pretty much all the reporting. I don't think he got into too much trouble, although, like I said, the fire brigade got involved at the airport prank. I'm sure he's gotten a lot of warnings, but he's not new. He's been doing this for over 20 years, so I'm sure local authorities are pretty well aware of this guy and his so-called funny pranks of dressing up as costume characters. He does a lot of like video game characters. So he's got a little go kart. I'll drive around as Mario Kart. I mean, I guess some of it's kind of funny, but I don't know. It's kind of stupid at the same time. It's just an attention seeker. Um, but trying to fool people into seeing UFOs, I think that's you're dealing with fear on a different level, other than somebody seeing a guy in a costume walking around in the streets. Um, yeah, I think it's a little different. But anyway, it's all over now. Unfortunately, whenever you have a story like that that gets big, somebody else takes it on and somebody else tries to do it. Now, I think what he did is in reaction to a story we talked about a few months ago about a similar incident, but it wasn't as worldwide, I guess. But yeah, it's not hard to fool the press, not hard to fool the media, but you got to be careful what you do with the general public. But the big story in UFOs this week, it's kind of a confusing story because there's a couple different angles, a couple different sides to this, and we kind of knew this was coming ever since June of this year. Then, of course, September they were talking about creating a new task force behind this. So last week, a successor to the U.S. Navy's Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force was ordered to be created. Again, we kind of knew it was coming, even though the UAPTF was just created last year in June. Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks ordered the investigative organization to be created in the U.S. Defense Department's Intelligence and Security Office. This office will take over for the Navy's UAP task force and will focus on reports in or near areas that are called special use airspace. So that's areas that are restricted to general aviation due to secure areas such as military bases or exercises. This leads to focus on reports where the fear isn't little green men flying spaceships, but instead technology of rival countries, or even what I think is private industries here in the United States that is unknown to U.S. military or even scientists. Yeah, I think our own people are spying on our own government. That's kind of what I think is going on here, too. The new office will be dubbed the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group. That's a mouthful. AOIMSG. And I think it used to create acronyms by taking a cool word that had a couple of things in it, just kind of filling in the letters. Now they just kind of create stuff. And I don't know, it just sounds horrible. And they're going to be supervised, talking about horrible acronyms, they're going to be supervised by the AOI MEXEC. I don't even know how you say that. OIMEX? I don't know. But that's the Airborne Object Identification and Management Executive Council. Why even do it? Why even do I don't know. Well, that's going to look snazzy on a letterhead for sure, but probably not so cool on a T-shirt. I hate to work in that. I mean, I wouldn't mind working in that organization, but yeah, I wouldn't want to wear a T-shirt with that on it for sure. The office will be overseen by a panel of military and intelligence community experts. In other words, when you're saying a panel of military and intelligence community experts, that pretty much means people have no idea what the heck they're talking about and have no clue how to identify logical solutions, and only people who will continue to redact information from the general public and continue to ask money for further research and documentation. And all that money, yeah, it's all about money. It's just going to get funneled into other things. I mean, if they're seeing and experiencing things they don't understand, what's the point of documenting it? Because you're not taking any steps to really understand it. You're just documenting so you can tell other people. It's pretty much all that's going on here. So it's confusing. I don't see the reason for funneling all this money into this if all it is really going to be documenting it and shifting it into different organizations and moving this information around. Um, it's just kind of weird. Hicks wrote a memo on the announcement stating that this new office will standardize the process for reporting UAP incidents, as well as, quote, identifying and reducing gaps in operational and intelligence detecting capabilities, collecting and analyzing operation, intelligence, and counterintelligence data, recommending policy, regulatory, or statutory changes as appropriate, identifying approaches to prevent or mitigate any risks posed by airborne objects of interest and other activities as deemed necessary by the director, unquote. So, yeah, a lot of hocus pocus. Now, it is good to standardize the reporting process. I agree with that. Collecting and analyzing the information, but they're really not doing anything with it. It's more or less just piling up somewhere and just used to generate fear and create money, basically money to open up these organizations, which it sounds interesting when you say, well, we're opening this office up. But it's not like you're, opening a building and putting a bunch of people into a building and saying, here's the office of the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group. No, it's just, again, just letterhead, just emails, it's just people grabbing reports and shifting paperwork around and getting money for it, basically. And this is all coming from fear generated from the last few years of leaked things to the media, and now they're getting money for it. It's kind of weird. Um, I think everybody calls all the private individuals or private organizations that were researching all this stuff, like Newfork and MUFON, a bunch of crazy people. Now here they are doing the same thing. Granted, they're not looking at it from the angle of UFOs like we'd like them to be. Now, all the paranormal bloggers and news outlets are taking the alien UFO angle on this. That's really not what all this is about. This is mostly about technology that we have identified or seen that defies logic. Now, none of the videos that were released over the last few years are of those typical stories that are out there. These are just ones that they probably know are identifiable. They're just kind of using it to confuse people. Hopefully they do, because it didn't take too long for most of those to find some logical conclusions. Now, one story mentioned in a handful of articles talking about this, the story discusses the July test of a Chinese globe circling hypersonic vehicle. The vehicle is able to travel 5 times the speed of sound, as well as launch a missile while doing so. That's a little crazy. It's a little scary. And this finding among certainly others out there that we're unaware of has alerted the military and intelligence communities that there's other countries out there that are developing technology beyond what we're capable of employing. Whether or not we're creating this technology ourselves, again, we don't know. And maybe even some of the intelligence people don't know what's being developed, because everything is done Everything's compartmentalized in the government, so a lot of people don't know what's going on down the hall. Um, Meanwhile, all of this is unraveling. A bipartisan amendment was introduced in the U.S. Senate by Kirsten Hillebrand and has been attached to the National Defense Authorization Act, basically the 2022 Defense Act, which was a big deal last year. So kind of led to all this. The measure, which is just one of 800 attached to the 2022 Defense Act, and you know they're going to read every single page, right? No, they won't. This hopes to establish a quote anomaly surveillance and resolution office unquote. And this amendment would include a little bit more than what the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group would include. Would also include an oversight committee, including non-military experts and civilian academics. You mean the general public? That's crazy. We can't do that. As well as other avenues of communication with foreign allies as well as Congress. And that would be a little bit more open than what this other one is rushed into process here. But yeah, we shall see how that unfolds. But yeah, I guess UFOs have become fully political, and let's see, would they get paid? Well, if they get paid, sign me up. Um, I'm sure the committee wouldn't get paid. They're just people that they would contact. Say, hey, look at this information. What do you think? Um, Especially being non-military civilian, I don't know if they'd have to sign a contract or anything. An NDA, more than likely, would be included with that. So I don't know if they get paid. Probably. This is all about money, really. This is all just about funneling of money from one thing to another, um, providing some. I mean, this is pretty scary stuff that we're talking about here, with foreign adversaries utilizing technology to spy on us, to watch our military, see what we're doing, how we're conducting our training, and there's nothing we can do about it. That's the scary part about it. It's not about UFOs, little green men. I would be excited if that was the case, but I'm more afraid of this technology that's zooming in on us off the coast of Florida and off the coast of California that we can't track. We don't know what it is. Don't know where it's coming from. More than likely, a foreign adversary. That's pretty scary. And it doesn't matter how many acronyms you come up with. I just want these things contained. I want to find out what they are, where they're coming from, what they're doing. That's all I care about, and I don't care what you call it. Let's just stop it. Just put a stop to it, and stop throwing acronyms and taking my money, and figure it out. But yeah, UFOs are now fully political, and we don't hear too much about these other organizations. Where is MUFON in all this? What are they doing? They need to step up. Why aren't they contacting Congress? Why aren't they stepping up? Why aren't they stepping out? It's time to come out of the shadows, guys. Show what you're made of. You're worried about your July meeting already. Why aren't you out there in D.C.? Why wasn't anybody out there doing anything about all this? I don't know. They need to get involved. But they're not. It's pretty sad. Anyway, we'll see. That's your UFO news for this week. Next, we actually have a story in the ghost news. And this is the story I talked about earlier tonight that is kind of wrapping up, was from the first show of the year. First show of 2021. I talked about how Robert Bigelow, speaking of UFOs, was offering up $1 million for winning essays on the topic of the possibility of the survival of human consciousness after the death of the physical body. Bigelow has long been known for his involvement in UFOs as well as space. and was it Budget In or something like that? He's made a lot of money, and he's been trying to get involved in all these strange paranormal topics over the last few years. But with the passing of his wife Diane last year, after 55 years of marriage, as well as his son and sadly, ultimately his grandson, both committed suicide many years ago. He began to personally ponder the question: is there life after death? He eventually founded the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies, BICS. Now, that's a cool acronym I can get behind, um, to hopefully advance research on what exists as far as an afterlife. He's personally convinced that consciousness does, in fact, survive the death of the body. Now, there was a contest launched in January, and it was set to end on August 1st. And participants had to submit a 25,000 word thesis on the theme of the quote possibility of survival of human consciousness beyond bodily death, unquote. A panel of experts would then evaluate the papers and select three winners. And the first place winner would receive $500,000, second, $300,000, and third, $150,000. Now, my biggest fear was um, whenever you involve money, this seems to be the topic here tonight, you may not get the quality, I guess, but maybe it takes that. Maybe it takes a financial reward to bring some people out of the woodwork, maybe that may have some good ideas or good information, and it worked. Bigelow received over 2,000 responses to the contest, with nearly 40 countries represented. I thought about it. I don't have enough time to write a blog, let alone 25,000 word thesis. But I read a few of these, and they're pretty good. I think I could have competed with a few of them, but I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But they did narrowed the papers down from 2,000 responses and down to 200. Then they hired 6 writers and academics that were familiar with the topic to act as judges. While the original intent was to award 3 winners, the judges got with Bigelow, and they just decided that there's just so many high quality proposals that they opted to award 29 essays as winners, with the last 15 being honorable mentions. So this meant the prize money went from nearly $1 million all the way up to $1.8 million, with 11 participants after the top 3 earning $50,000 each, and the next 15 earning $20,000 each. The winning essay belonged to parapsychologist Jeffrey Mishlove, and his effort was titled Beyond the Brain: Survival of Human Consciousness After Permanent Bodily Death. And I'm not even done reading this thing yet. It's been out for a little bit, but I haven't gotten through it. It's 98 pages. It also includes numerous video clips, as well as there's some testimonials on near-death and reincarnation experiences involved. And it's a pretty interesting presentation, I guess. I mean, yeah, it's mostly writing, but with the videos, it's kind of cool. It gives a different kind of, it adds a lot more volume to it. And I'm really happy that a parapsychologist won this, as they should. So Jeffrey Mishlove gets the grand prize. Out of all the essays, most of them are doctors or people are, most of them are involved in a metaphysical field. So they're not medical doctors or anything like that. But it's pretty cool to look through the who's who of the people that made the list. Now, if you're interested, if you got the time to read 98-page essays, some of them are a lot shorter, but 25,000 words. That's a good chunk of real estate on paper. They're all available to be downloaded as PDF files, so you can sit there and you can read through them. I've read through a few of them. And you can go to the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies website at bigelowinstitute.org. Well, I guys all just went there and you crashed the site. That's awesome. Oh, not really. But bigelowinstitute.org, you can again download those PDF files and read through them. Now, Bigelow plans to edit the 29 essays into a series of books, which he intends to give away for free to university libraries, hospitals, hospices, and religious organizations. I think that's pretty cool. And you don't hear too much about consciousness studies at all, pretty much, let alone, much in the way of anything consciousness studies, other than people trying to hawk books or videos or video channels and things like that. But I think this is well lauded, even if this is an attempt to personally understand what's going on with his loved ones. I think it's generated a lot of interest, and it's unfortunate this story isn't as big as it should be. But I think this is a very noble effort, and I think the information that's attached to these essays and so many different viewpoints. I mean, you just give a basic topic like that and let people go crazy, and there's a lot of angles that I've looked at on this. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that borders each other, but there's a lot of different angles that people took with us, and I think that's why it made it so difficult to narrow down to just the top three, and they ended up having to choose 29. But great reads, and yeah, maybe, I don't know, I'll have to break them all down a little bit more, I guess. I don't know, but I still got to get through Jeffrey's 98 pages and his videos. But great story. Probably one of the best stories out of the ghost field I've read in a long, long time. And with that, yeah, I mean, there's no, okay, so let me put it to you this way. Yeah, it's basically opinions. It's basically perspective. There's not really a whole lot of scientific work behind it. Unfortunately, we haven't heard much in the way of scientists looking at consciousness too much. There are some stories out there. There's been some new technologies in the last few years, but yeah, this is pretty much all. What am I trying to say? Subjective for the most part here, but still, it kind of jars your memory, or jars your mind, I should say, a little bit on the topic and gets you thinking about things. But yeah, it doesn't provide any solid solutions to anything, but still need to read, still need to look through everything. And with that, we've come to a close for tonight's show. I will have a show next week. Don't fear, I won't take another month and a half off. I'll be back, and I will see you next week. But for now, keep your eyes in the skies, your ears in the woods, the hair standing on the back of your neck, and always keep your mind slightly ajar. And above all else, don't stop believing. For the Paranormal News Insider, this is Dr. Brian D. Parsons reporting.